Okay, I fucked up. I'm sorry.
Dalton Russell begins by telling us that he's currently sitting inside what looks like a prison cell. Recently, he pulled off a bank robbery so brilliant that many call it perfect. What he did left everyone puzzled, wondering how he managed to pull it off and vanish without a trace. To understand what really happened, we go back a few days earlier. It's a regular morning in New York City. A group of painters arrives at the Manhattan Trust Bank, supposedly for renovations. The bank is always busy, filled with customers coming and going. Among these painters is Russell himself, disguised in work clothes. Once inside, he quickly hacks into the bank's CCTV system, shutting down all the cameras. The moment the feeds go dark, his team springs into action, and the robbery begins.
Everybody get down on the fucking floor now!
And just like that, the game begins. This is Inside Man.
Inside Man.
Outside, a passing police officer notices something strange. Realizing that a robbery is underway, he immediately calls for backup. Within minutes, the building is surrounded. Russell then steps forward, warning that he'll kill the hostages if anyone dares to storm in.
You fucking cops come near this door, I start killing people.
Soon, Keith Frazier and Bill Mitchell arrive on the scene, assigned to take control of the case. By the time they get there, the Manhattan Trust Bank is completely locked down. Every entrance and exit is sealed, and escape seems impossible. Meanwhile, the bank's owner, Arthur Case, is informed that one of his branches is under attack. At first, he seems calm, but the moment he hears which branch it is, his expression changes. He looks worried. Inside the bank, things appear tense but under control. Russell gathers all the hostages in front of the main vault, ordering them to hand over their keys and phones. One of the managers tries to outsmart him by pretending he left his phone at home, but Russell sees through the lie instantly. The man pays the price, beaten badly enough to serve as an example.
Okay, I fucked up. I'm sorry.
From that point on, no one dares to resist him again. Russell then forces everyone to change into identical outfits, coveralls just like the robbers wear. Now, it's impossible to tell who's a hostage and who's part of the crew. The hostages are split into different rooms, but when Russell notices that one elderly man is suffering from a heart condition, he unexpectedly releases him. Whether out of pity or practicality, no one knows. When police find the old man outside, they mistake him for one of the robbers because of his uniform. He's taken in for questioning, but the detectives get nothing useful out of him. No names, no details, no plan. Even Darius, the commanding officer on site, admits that they have no solid lead on who's really behind the operation. Detective Frazier decides not to take any rash action. He'll wait for the robbers to make their next move. But Russell doesn't seem interested in stealing cash. Instead of raiding the vault, he focuses his attention on an empty room deeper inside the building. At the same time, Arthur Case, growing desperate, hires a powerful attorney named Madeline White. He tells her that inside that bank lies something extremely valuable to him, locked away in one of the safety deposit boxes. He doesn't want the police to see it, or worse, sees it as evidence once the investigation is over. Madeline, curious about what's inside, presses him for details. But Arthur refuses to say a word. After some time with no movement from the robbers, Detective Keith decides to take the first step and open negotiations. But when he tries to call, Dalton Russell doesn't pick up. He's deliberately stalling for time. Moments later, one of the hostages is released. Only this time, the man walks out with a metal box strapped around his neck. At the same time, Madeline White, determined to protect her client's secret, goes straight to the mayor of New York. She requests official permission to enter the bank and negotiate directly with the robbers. Whatever history she and the mayor share, it clearly works in her favor, because her request is granted almost instantly. Back with the freed hostage, Keith tries to gather any clue he can about what's happening inside. But again, he gets nothing. Just like before, the robbers have left no trail. That's because Russell has been cautious from the very beginning. His team never uses names and communicates only through signals. When the police open the metal box, they find a note of list of demands from Russell. He wants 2 buses and a private jet waiting at a nearby airport. If his request isn't met by 9 o'clock that night, he warns that hostages will be killed one by one. The demand sounds absurd. A private jet? Keith immediately knows that granting it is impossible. But in the middle of the discussion, Arthur Case suddenly steps in. Desperate to keep his secret hidden, he offers his own private jet for the robbers to use, hoping to resolve the situation quickly. His reaction confirms that whatever's inside that safety deposit box must be something he's terrified of losing. A short while later, the robbers make another demand, this time food. They want to feed all the hostages. The message is delivered through one of the captives. To Keith, this looks like an opportunity. He plans to hide listening devices inside the food containers to spy on the robbers' conversations. The plan works perfectly. Soon, Keith and his team start hearing chatter from inside the bank. But something strange happens. The voices they hear aren't speaking English. Keith scrambles to identify the language, but no one on site recognizes it. They bring in civilians to help, and finally someone identifies it as Albanian. To decode what's being said, they bring in a translator. Meanwhile, inside the bank, Russell keeps shifting hostages between rooms. He secretly mixes members of his crew among them, blending robbers with real captives. This clever trick ensures that later, when police question the hostages, no one can say for sure who was innocent and who wasn't. One of his men even pretends to be a loud, arrogant hostage to create chaos and confusion. In another moment, Russell is seen calmly talking with a young boy inside a vault packed with stacks of money. But it becomes clear he isn't after the cash at all. His goal lies elsewhere. Back outside, the translator finally bursts into laughter. The audio that the police are listening to is a recording of a speech by the president of Albania. Russell had anticipated the police's every move, even their attempt to bug him. After a long time inside the bank, Russell finally goes for a safety deposit box numbered 392. Inside are many black bags, but his real prize is not the bags, it is a folder filled with old documents. Soon after, the mayor of New York arrives at the scene and asks Detective Keith to allow Madeline White to join the negotiations. Keith wants to refuse, but he is pressured into agreeing. The standoff has already seen 2 phone exchanges between Keith and Russell's deadline is fast approaching. He warns that if his demands are not met, hostages will be killed one by one. Time is running out. Negotiations reach a dead end, so Madeline is given the chance to speak with Russell directly. She tells him she will come inside to meet him face to face. Madeline makes 2 offers, both blunt and transactional, one promising a light sentence if Russell surrenders, the other promising an enormous sum of money, $30 billion, if he cooperates. Russell refuses both offers. He already knows who Madeline works for. Then Russell reveals the real motive, a secret that rewrites everything. 60 years earlier, an American betrayed his friend and colluded with the Nazis for vast profit, and that man is Arthur Case, the bank's owner. The safety deposit box holds evidence of that wartime collaboration. For reasons unknown, Arthur never destroyed the documents, and Russell now plans to hold them as leverage, to make sure no one can quietly bury the truth. Madeline tries to dismiss him, confident the police will eventually break in and arrest everyone. Russell stays calm, insisting he will leave through the front door, just as he promised. Madeline refuses to disclose the details of their conversation afterwards, but she walks away convinced that the robbers were bluffing, and that they would never actually kill hostages. Keith, however, senses a larger scheme. The whole affair has been a delaying game for a more elaborate plan. Keith proposes to Russell that he be allowed into the building to check on the hostages' welfare. In exchange, Keith guarantees that the private jet Russell demands will be provided. They strike an uneasy agreement. Keith enters, checks the hostages, and reports that they are alive. Confident, he tries to intimidate Russell, warning that the police will soon storm the bank and neutralize everyone inside. Russell remains unfazed, reiterating his claim that they will all walk out the front door when the plan is complete. Then, as Keith turns to leave, he unexpectedly attacks Russell.
God. Prison White.
Hey!
Moments later, Russell forces Keith to watch the CCTV footage. On the monitors, the robbers execute one of the hostages without hesitation. The image shocks everyone, and the room erupts into chaos. Keith attempts to reopen negotiations, but the damage is done. The death of a hostage enrages the chain of command, and authority is taken away from Keith. Command passes to Darius, who immediately readies a breach. He and his team believe that if they act before dawn, they can overwhelm the robbers and end the crisis. As the police prepare to storm the bank, Detective Keith suddenly realizes something strange about the metal box that was delivered earlier. When he opens it, he finds a listening device inside. That means the robbers have been one step ahead all along, eavesdropping on the police's entire strategy. Keith immediately radios Darius to call off the raid, but Darius, already impatient, decides to go through with it anyway. At the same time, Russell and his crew, listening to everything from inside, put their final plan into motion. He orders his team to release the hostages. In the chaos that follows, the robbers drop their weapons and blend into the crowd of panicked hostages rushing out of the bank. As police outside fire rubber bullets and detain everyone, they have no idea who's innocent and who's part of the heist. Every person is now a suspect. Inside, officers sweep the building, checking each room to make sure it's clear. They search for the body of the hostage who was supposedly executed earlier, but there's nothing there. No blood, no body. Even the vault is untouched, with all the money still in place. Then more odd details surface. The robbers' guns turn out to be plastic replicas. Fake blood and rags are found in a bathroom, proving the execution was staged. The storage room that was once torn apart is now empty, and the hole the robbers had been digging is completely gone. Meanwhile, outside, the hostages are loaded onto buses to be processed one by one. Everyone is questioned, but one thing stands out: Dalton Russell is nowhere to be found. His 3 accomplices are there, but he's simply vanished. At the station, each of the 3 is interrogated, but everything checks out. Their stories match the other hostages, and their records are spotless. Even the bank confirms that none of its money is missing. With no suspects, no casualties, and no stolen cash, Keith's superiors decide to close the case. But Keith isn't convinced. He's sure the robbers were after something else, something hidden. As he reviews the reports, he spots an inconsistency. One safety deposit box isn't listed. It's missing from the bank's official records, deliberately concealed. Determined to uncover the truth, Keith goes to court and requests a warrant to open the hidden box. As evidence, he uses a secret recording of the mayor's conversation that hinted at something shady within the bank. Madeline White, realizing she's been outplayed, rushes to inform Arthur Case. Arthur doesn't deny it. He admits how he once profited from the Holocaust and kept proof of it locked away in box number 392. Inside those old files are Nazi documents and a collection of flawless diamonds. Madeline concludes that the heist was never about money, it was about exposing Arthur's secret. Finally, the story circles back to the beginning. Dalton Russell reveals that he's been hiding all along, inside a hidden chamber behind the storage room wall. During the hostage situation, he and his team secretly built a false wall, creating a new space no one would notice. The hole they dug earlier wasn't an escape tunnel at all, it was just a makeshift toilet. And inside that hidden room, Russell sits surrounded by the black pouches he found in box 392, each one filled with diamonds of the highest quality. A week passes quietly as Dalton Russell hides behind the false wall inside the bank. He's lived in silence, waiting for the right moment to escape. Now, the time has come. Outside, his crew has been waiting since morning. But just as Russell prepares to slip out, they spot Detective Keith walking toward the building for a follow-up investigation. Still, Russell doesn't panic. He sticks to the plan. As he steps out, he and Keith briefly cross paths at the door. Keith glances at him, unaware that he's standing face to face with the very man he's been chasing. Just like that, Russell walks straight out of the Manhattan Trust Bank. He escapes through the front door, in plain sight. But the case isn't over. Russell leaves behind one final clue inside safety deposit box 392, a diamond ring and a small note that reads, "Follow the origin of this ring." It doesn't take long for Keith and his partner Bill to trace the message back to Arthur Case, the bank's owner. Through that single ring, Keith uncovers Arthur's dark past. Decades ago, Arthur betrayed his friend during the war and profited from Nazi dealings. The ring once belonged to that betrayed friend, a piece of evidence linking Arthur to war crimes that could now resurface in court. Later that evening, Keith returns home, exhausted. He sets down his badge and gun, loosening his tie. As he empties his pockets, a loose diamond catches his eye. For a moment, he's puzzled. Then it hits him. The stranger he brushed past earlier wasn't just anyone. It was Dalton Russell, and that diamond was a gift. Keith remembers their earlier encounter during the standoff, when Russell asked if he was married. Keith had admitted he couldn't even afford an engagement ring, let alone a wedding. Russell must have remembered. He saw honesty in Keith and in his own twisted way, chose to reward it. So the moral of the story is, if you ever plan to rob a bank, make sure you also study architecture, psychology, and acting, because apparently that's how you walk out the front door like nothing happened.